Aye.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee, 15th of October 2020. I notice that everybody's in attendance. There's no apologies. Does anybody have any declarations of interest to declare? No? No business outstanding, so I'll move to item 1 on the agenda, which is the Nicholas Street Precinct Executive Report, number 20. It's a report concerning the Executive Report on Nicholas Street Precinct Program of Works. I now call on the relevant council officer to come forward, please. Good afternoon. State your name, please.
Greg Thomas, Project Manager, Coordination and Performance. Through the Chair, the report provided an update on developments in the last month, but in summary, works are continuing on the administration building, separable portion 1 of the contract. This morning from my office I watched the last panel being placed on the western facade. Sort of sad in a way, looks good. So work is continuing. Basically you can't even see the activity from outside because everything's happening internally now. So at the present time we believe practical completion will largely be around March. That's Hutchinson's practical completion, with occupation possibly to happen as early as June 2021. So still to be finalised, but all sounding very positive at the moment. So as previously indicated, works practical completion has been achieved on both the car park, with a couple of small things still outstanding, and also the library. FF&E installation, IT, etc. is underway with the library. So at this present time, the official opening of the library and the civic space will largely be, I think it's the 28th of November is the likely date. So the events team is looking at how that's going to happen, and James might hint at that in his retail report shortly. So in terms of other activities that's going on, which are obvious to both, I guess, workers on the site and also people who live in Ipswich, the East building, the alterations to the facade and Bottle Alley are progressing well. The building is really taking shape now. The awning is complete, and that work will be completed by the end of November in time for opening for a safe passage on that side and down through the street from the library and the plaza. So connectivity between Nicholas Street with finished surfaces and look and feel, and the new library and the precinct. So that's a good outcome. So the other thing that's really moving along now is the Commonwealth Hotel reconstruction. So built, well established on site, and we anticipate within the next week or 2 that the panels will be being shifted back in from Briggs Road Depot and being installed on site. They're the major things, Chair, in terms of development. So James will cover the issues associated with the retail investment in this paper.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Thomas? Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Thomas, Mark, the artwork on the Metro AV sort of area with the cars and those garage doors, and the artwork,
yep.
I think Ipswich Property's paid for. I have asked in the past, but is there a plan to keep those?
Recover?
Or
Yeah. There has been some interest from a party for those, yep. So they'll be, because that is going to be refurbished as part of the future spend, the facade of Metro Way. So yeah, we can recover those so they're not lost.
Thank you.
Yep.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Any further questions? No. I have some questions around obviously the anchor tenant lease and a few other things, but we'll leave that to Mr. Hepburn's report. So nothing further from me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have a mover for the report? Mayor Harding, thank you, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Milligan. Open up for discussion. Mayor?
If I may, Chair, I just note that obviously as the project gets closer towards completion, that more and more of the risks are being, I guess, put to bed. I guess they're no longer there, and note that those risk ratings have been coming down for the actual build.
Yes. Good qualification there, Matt. Okay, if there's nothing further, we'll put the matter to the vote. In favour? Notice that it's unanimous decision. Thank you. Now move on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is the Retail Sub-Project Steering Committee, the report concerning the steering committee on the status of the leasing program and associated developments with the retail component of Nicholas Street Precinct redevelopment. Can I have the relevant council officer come forward, please? Thank you. Would you state your name, everybody?
Good afternoon, James Hepburn. I chair the Retail Sub-Project Committee. The main focus for the last month covered in this report, alongside the recommendations and executive summary, has really been around, again, retail leasing, the risks around the leasing, and where the team's focus has been in particularly closing out the cinema deal, which is obviously the main commercial and leisure anchor to the scheme. As it stands, there's no significant change from the rest of the heads of terms and legals. We have 8 heads of terms agreed, of which 6 have now progressed into legal documentation, including the cinema. We don't expect a huge amount of progression on those deals until the cinema deal is closed and public statements can be made to allow the market to gain confidence and help us move forwards as a scheme. But as it stands, the current COVID market, again, I don't see this as being too bad a scenario to be in, and I'm relatively positive about the way the market's reacting to the product and the scheme that we're putting forwards. As I said, much of the focus has been on the cinema. We've been negotiating and renegotiating for the best part of 6 months now, and we're down to the last couple of days of closing the deal. As we're aware, there's a paper coming forward to the council to deal with the evolution of the financials, both on construction cost as well as improvements to the financial viability and the rent incentives and the turnover within that deal, of which I can't talk about due to commercial sensitivity at this moment in time. I guess what I will say just on top of that is that both legal teams and the leasing team and everyone is prepped to close that deal. We're all aware that, as Greg has mentioned, the venue building is ready to go in terms of construction, and any weeks delayed now have a knock-on effect to our planned opening for September next year. Moving on, as of last month, we have brought on board Ali Grant, who is now fantastically heading up sort of precinct management in some way, but more activation and enabling our sort of marketing comms team all to come together in one place and look at how the Nicholas Street, the scheme, square, and everything is going to react to, in particular, the library opening at the end of this year, and then how we're going to activate the precinct going forwards into 2021 and on to September and then on to the year after. And so there's a lot of catching up that's been going on and a lot of looking forwards taking place. In dealing with this year, there's some positivity around temporary activations and pop-ups, and we're in the process of looking at bringing in container crates to work outside of the library, and then pop-up markets to lead us into Christmas. We expect there'll probably be quite a quiet time over the Christmas period as a new product sits in Ipswich and people find their way around relating to it, and then as we sort of lead into January and Australia Day, that's when the activation will start to pick up again, and the focus of the team will come into really getting that out there in the public and bringing people in to experience what we've done. And then finally, we've just concluded the selection of a valuer, and in doing that, continues with our sort of workshop process. So to remind everyone, we've completed 2 of the planned workshops, The third will happen once the valuer has completed their work and we have a full understanding of what a third party thinks of our scheme in the current market. And we're expecting them to spend probably the next couple of weeks really fact finding and really getting up to speed on what's happening, with some early conclusions coming towards end of November. So in the ideal world, we'll probably aim to land the next workshop at the end of November, maybe even early December. And that will really deal with quick update on the cost to complete, where we sit on the retail leasing strategy, and then leading into what the finances look like and a recut of the budget to enable us to deliver the scheme over the course of the next year or two.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hepburn. I was delighted to hear of the appointment of Ms. Grant to oversee, amongst other things, activation of the space, because we all know that activation is key to the success in the precinct. It's underpins, that it is a food and entertainment precinct rather than heavily based on retail. And whilst we're on the subject of retail, I do note, in your paper you outlined the risk management implications, in particular the leasing program facing significant risks, including COVID, the pace of the retail market rebounding from COVID, securing the anchor tenant, and just current market conditions, which I think most people can absolutely appreciate. Are you able to speak to, though, global market indicators, global market conditions, specifically a little bit of feedback from residents, people within the community are concerned? For example, in the US, a lot of shopping centres are closing down. I was interested to read an article sent through from your leasing team about the trends out of the US, but the differences with the market here in Australia, certainly with regard to planning laws. Would you mind speaking to that?
Yeah, it's a huge subject. It's actually one that we could also, I'll talk about as much as I can now, but it could be one we take offline and I think build into what we think our precinct is going to be and how we're going to manage the region going forwards. The US is a bit of an anomaly. There's a huge amount of stock. They were heavily reliant on departmental stores. And there's a more so sort of multi-level trading along the lines of David Jones, but whether down at Kmart's level or up at David Jones' more premium offer. Australia is different in many ways to the US and particularly to Europe because we have a lot of longer distance for people to travel. We also have a weather system that pushes everyone into our shopping centres during very hot times of the year. So they have weathered, excuse the pun, better than most. I think there's been a slow transition in Australia and certainly in Queensland to online sales, but that's happening. We're all aware of the big Amazon warehouses that are appearing. There's one being built now in Queensland, I think between us and Brisbane actually. Amazon itself is not the big danger, it's how all the retailers react to that. So for me, and where I feel comforted, the scheme that we're putting forward here is about placemaking, it's about leisure, it's about culture, it's about jobs. That's not a shopping centre. It's not somebody that's competing with an online sale. And we're offering an experience, something you can't buy online unless you're getting your ticket through the app, which would be fantastic. So there seems to be a demand for that product in the market. There currently isn't much demand or investment going on in the rest of the world, dare I say, but that really is down to COVID. They're going into a very dark winter, unfortunately, and the result of that, who knows? But a lot of the shopping centres are going up there are going to suffer, and we'll see how the businesses deal with that and how the governments deal with that in terms of rate reliefs, etc. But certainly the bounce back here has been very, very quick, and hopefully with the weather permitting, we'll see a stabilisation of that. But again, the major shopping centres that aren't in city centres, that aren't real big destinations, they are seeing a decline in rents, and they're seeing a decline in sales, and obviously cap rates slipping out, which means they're not as attractive to superannuation funds and Chinese investors when they're coming in to deploy capital in Australia. So there is a shift in the market. and with a population increase perhaps in Queensland, it's going to be a big pickup in the next couple of years, and residential stock in city centres and densifying areas is where certain trends may go. So I think I think we have to differentiate ourselves from a shopping centre product, because that's not really what we're offering at all. It's an experience anchored by an art gallery, an admin building, a massive car park, a cinema, and a wonderful new public square.
Okay, thank you. And just one final question for me. It's regarding a couple of state-owned assets down at the precinct across Bell Street. So we have firstly the awning, which is the covered pedestrian crossing across Bell Street to the train station. I know we've been having discussions, and I think there's some due diligence has been undertaken as to the condition of the awning and potentially taking over that asset from the state and being able to improve it, because it is, once people get off the train, the first thing they see, it's a welcome to our precinct. And the second asset is the walkway over Bell Street. It's a bit redundant. It's now closed. It used to, from memory, when I was much younger, it was the entryway to the shopping centre, and that's now closed off. And as I understand it, it does encroach or impact on space that we will be looking to, commercially lease out. So just wondering if you have any updates, or maybe that was a question better for Mr. Thomas.
Perhaps it's a bit of both of us. I'll just briefly comment. I think the walkway is redundant. It's an eyesore, and it's a liability for someone. Clearly, we don't want it to be our liability, but it should be removed.
Yeah. And I should add, I've had recently a couple of really positive discussions with our local member Jennifer Howard, who's been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to get that asset removed. So if we can be successful in that regard, that would be great. Certainly at no cost to council, would be
absolutely.
even better.
I think with the first point regarding the awning, it does appear to be in good state.
Okay.
I do believe I'm right in saying that Greg is undertaking further structural investigations to check what state it's in, so we don't inherit again another problem over a live road. But it provides a good sun deflection from people making, for me, what is quite an important journey from the train station into the heart of our city. And just some of the, commentary we've picked up as a team around it is probably not to do so much with the awning, which is an important thing to keep, and if we can control, even better, but more to do with what happens at the ground level. Currently, the crossing from the station does not align with where you'll enter the scheme or veer off down into Union Place. And there's been quite a bit of chat around how do we extend this crossing, how do we make it more people friendly. We can't create a conflict between the person and the car, but we can certainly make the journey from the station across to the city centre a lot easier, and we can certainly control traffic, or at least make them aware of increased trip generation from pedestrians.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions. Well, so sorry, there are a couple of items that we'll probably need to move into closed session for those, but does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Hepburn?
I have
Yes, Chair.
Mr. Hepburn, obviously we're at the market. It's a beautiful precinct, a terrific opportunity. What are you hearing back from the market? What are they seeing as the highlights of the precinct?
I think it's a mix of anchors. Whereas we go back to the shopping centre analogy, where you've got Kmart, Target, Woolworths, Coles, and maybe Myer or David Jones, and they all kind of congregate at extremities with feeding value in the middle. We take all those names out and swap them for what will be an outstanding new 8-screen cinema, already a very successful art gallery, and a beautiful new public square. And then for me, a major anchor and attracted to this is going to be this wonderful, safe, well lit 1,000 space car park that sits under the square. Those for me are what a lot of the leisure, food and beverage industry are looking at and going, right, okay, well, how does footfall look? What does dwell time look like? And how are people going to spend their money making the journey to these different
Yeah.
places.
And what about our population growth? Are people aware of our population growth when they're...
Yeah, they certainly are. Obviously it was quite slow dealing with people in Victoria over the last couple of months, but that started to pick up again already. And population growth is really interesting at the moment because no one really knows where it's going to go. But we are seeing a huge amount of investment into real estate and the propping up of residential markets, all the way up and down the coast. And we're starting to see migration of people from Melbourne and Victoria to Brisbane and the surrounds. So, I think we'd need to find someone with a bit more hard facts on it to dig into. But I think there's a good opportunity here to pick up some of that and look at how you attract businesses to Ipswich.
As the fastest growing local council in Queensland, yes. Thanks.
Any further questions? Would anyone like to move into closed session to discuss some of the terms of the proposed cinema deal? Not at this stage, I think.
I'm not sure. It's up to you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Milligan, and a seconder for this report. Thank you, Councillor Johnick. Any further discussion? No, we might put it to the vote. All those in favour? I note that it is a unanimous decision, which brings us to the final item on the agenda, which is the draft community safety strategy for the Nicholas Street precinct. Can I call the relevant council officer down, please? Council officers.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Chair and councillors. Alison Grant is my name, Engagement Manager, and my partner in crime, Community Safety and Innovation Manager, Larry Waite. Obviously a very exciting time for council, given we're really weeks away from opening another stage of our precinct, which is very exciting. Community safety being paramount, and the perception of community safety certainly out and about in the community. We need to make sure that when our families are coming in to visit the precinct, that they feel comfortable, they feel safe, and that councillors looking after them and their loved ones. So I've had the pleasure of working on this project with Larry. Obviously the brains behind the actual community safety strategy for the Nicholas Street precinct that you have in front of you. What I might do is just quickly go through how the engagement team has supported the project so far and will continue to do so, and then I'll flick over to Mr. Waite here to deliver some of his content. So what was important for us, and certainly for the broader project team, was that again we were taking the community on the journey with us when we're looking at developing these types of strategies, and that they know that they have a say in what we're doing moving forward. So we went out to start with to our smaller stakeholder community within the precinct itself, and we asked them their thoughts around safety, the perception of safety, and what might be holding some of their, some potential visitors or residents from coming in to visit the precinct at the moment. Not surprisingly, first and foremost was the fact that at the moment it's pretty much empty, and the perception is that, somewhat it's closed. The other bits and pieces of feedback will not be surprising. Obviously, antisocial behaviour was up there, perception that the precinct is unsafe, perception that the precinct is not family friendly, a lack of security and police presence, and a perceived lack of cleanliness. So there's certainly issues that that Mr. Waite has addressed in his report, and I'm sure are absolutely priorities for him when he works to deliver this, should it be endorsed by council. What we plan to do moving forward is to take this subject not just of safety but of the engagement and activation within the precinct to the broader community. So our plan, once this strategy is endorsed, is to go out to the whole community and say, this is your precinct. What would you like to see there? Why haven't you visited? How can we bring you back? And certainly to build on the really good placemaking work that's been done, and to make sure that as we're moving forward with the activations, we're really reflecting what those families and residents would like to see within their precinct. So, any questions on the engagement before I hand over?
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Larry Waite, Community Safety and Innovations Manager. We gave just a basic in the report, a basic overview from the information we currently have and the information that we knew that we would gather regardless of the community in Australia. We all share similar issues, some greater than others. And to deal with these issues, we thought we need to involve the community, both businesses and residents of the immediate vicinity, to help identify what those issues are and bring them along on the journey of finding and resolving these issues to make it safer and that perception, change that perception to one of more positive outlook. To do that, we're just going to adopt some, not just going to, but we're adopting some basic crime prevention and public safety strategies and some common sense know-how from what we know from the area, and of course leveraging off the Safe City network as well, and how we can participate and work in leverage from the current security situations we have with the guards as well as the camera systems. It can be very involved, or it will be quite simple. The report gives basic 4 main pillars of public safety, but effectively all it's doing is addressing identifying areas that require lighting, that require opening up a little bit more to create that safer, welcoming environment, as well as keeping the city clean, from removing graffiti, repairing things that are damaged, and also having a presence, whether it be from police, whether it be from security, as well as council officers going about their businesses, and cleaners and shopkeepers and business, just getting them out and participating and taking some pride in their immediate areas, which would affect the overall precinct. That's the strategy. We need the community to do it. We can't do it alone, and we welcome the opportunity to invite them on board to find the solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Mate. I would just like to commend you on the safety strategy that you're, putting forward. You were, and I know you'll be a reluctant hero, but you were absolutely part of the transformation of Ipswich all those years ago, and I have complete confidence that you're the man to take us on the next part of our journey. So I'm really excited to see what you've got for us.
Thank you, and I'm just as excited.
Thank you. Any further questions, Mr. Way? No?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I get somebody to move this report, please? Thank you, Councillor Milligan. And the seconder, Councillor Jonick. Open up for discussion. Yes, Mayor.
I just want to point out, I thought it was quite a good community engagement report. I know the numbers weren't large, but that was, I think, quality and actually impactful, the right people to speak to. So I was actually quite impressed, and honestly, with their feedback and honesty, and I think it actually dovetails quite nicely then into that draft, that community safety strategy that we're looking at as well. So I thought it worked quite well together. So thank you very much, Ms. Grant. Ms. White, thank you.
And I note that the report and the feedback, the word perception is used a lot, and I absolutely agree that some of this will come down to perception rather than reality. But it's an opportunity to focus on those perceptions and then address them publicly, whether or not a strategy is needed, or debunk a myth, so that we can move forward in a positive manner.
And I also note, Chair, that some of that stuff is out of our hands. It's with state governments, such as the Ipswich train station, the health plaza, bus station, the whole thing there. We need
Policing numbers.
We need to work very closely with our state colleagues.
Yes, good point, Mayor. Thank you. Okay, if there's no further discussion, we'll put the matter to the vote. All those in favour? I note that the decision is unanimous. And I think that brings us to the end of our committee today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And there are no other committees.
That's it.
I spoke to